Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
What's bubbling, magical people? Welcome back to the Witching Hour with Miss Merlin, where we like to talk about all things witchy and magical. Your one-stop source for everything witchy, metaphysical, and magic. I'm Kimmy, aka Miss Merlin, High Priestess and Shamaness, Medicine Woman, Psychic Medium, and Witch Extraordinaire. So let's jump on in. Today, we are talking the Egyptian deities. And we're going to get into that creation story. And as we go through a lot of these, y'all are going to start to see some patterns. Which is very interesting. Because if you think back to ancient civilizations, right? All of these places were on the completely different ends of the world. Okay, very, very, very difficult to travel in between these places. And yet, they still all had creation stories that were quite similar, interestingly enough. So before we start, I want to say, Bonjour, France. And I will give shout-outs to the other countries, too, as soon as I hit the top 10s there. Merci, France. Again. So, Canada, U.S., the rest of you, step it up. Come on, let's go. All right. So, let's get into it. Do people still worship the Egyptian deities? Yes, they do. Although the ancient religion, as it was once practiced thousands of years ago, is no longer mainstream, the ancient Egyptian gods are indeed still honored and worshipped today by practitioners of modern denominations, one of which is called Kemetism. It's a modern revival of ancient Egyptian practice. Practitioners known as Kemetics worship the traditional Egyptian deities. There are many forms of Kemetism with different approaches, followers usually engaging in practices such as prayer, offerings, and the creation of altars dedicated to the deities. So while not widespread, these practices do exist globally with groups and individuals dedicated to honoring the ancient Egyptian deities. It is important to note, though, that these practices will not be exactly the same as they were in ancient Egypt due to the loss of information over the millennia. So it's also worth noting too that within Egypt itself, the main religious beliefs are Islam and Christianity. So while there is global following for the ancient deities, it's not largely practiced within modern day Egypt at all. Also, the deities, some of them are still revered in eclectic paganism and neo-paganism. So let's talk about the Egyptian creation story. So in the beginning, there was nothing. Does not sound familiar. The universe consisted of a great chaotic ocean, and Benben emerged amid this primal chaos. Benben was a huge primordial mound, like a pyramid-shaped mound. And there was a lotus flower within this. And when it blossomed, it brought the god Ra, the sun god, to the world. And the light came with Ra. So by himself, he generated the first generation of gods. So there was Shu, the god of air, and there was Tefnut, the goddess of rain. The universe was then enwrapped in a vast mass of primordial water. Shu and Tefnut plunged into the water to explore its immensity. Ra, getting fearful, realizing that his children were taking a really long time to return, and he was scared something might have happened to them or he might never see them again, he sent his best messenger to find them. They were then returned safe and sound, and he was so joyful that he cried, and human beings were born from his tears. Now, interesting here, it depends on where you look, because there's another story that has someone else, a different deity, crying in bitterness and sorrow. And the tears of that is how humans were created. So again, it depends on the source in which you look. But I promise you, when I'm doing these, guys, I look at a lot of sources. And I find, like, the ones I'm telling you about are the ones that it's most, most people say this. All right, it's the best information. That's what I'm trying to give to you. All right. So human beings were created from the tears. And then the god Geb was created of the earth and Nut of the sky. And thus the sky and earth, sky and heaven, were also created. So Ra sovereignly ruled over this universe, and he was awarded title of the first pharaoh. Okay, so if you're not familiar with ancient Egypt civilization, their kings were called pharaohs, and they were supposed to be descendants of the deities. Okay, but we're going to get more into that. All right. And then Ra gifted Egypt with several sacred animals, like the oxen and the lion. But his greatest offering was the creation of the Nile River and its shores. Because the shores, again, if you're not familiar with the climate, the Nile floods every year, which makes the area surrounding it and all its shores very, very fertile after that. So men would then build the civilization there, glorifying these deities. But Ra had a premonition that his grandchildren would give birth to a new generation of deities who would put an end to his reign. Sound familiar? That happens in just about every pantheon we look at. So, the great God forbade the sky and the earth to have any offspring whatsoever, but Nut and Geb disobeyed and gave rise to powerful offspring. So these are probably the deities that you have heard before, okay? Isis.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay. Osiris. Okay. Set. And Nephthys. All right. So, anyways, these gods came and they dethroned Ra. Imagine that. And Osiris started the reign over the world. But the new god's throne was not safe either. Imagine that. Because his brother, Set, was eager to take all his power for himself, and so the saga of the Egyptian gods began. So we will start with the sons, okay? Osiris and Set. So after deposing Ra, their father, Osiris became the new god of the universe. He took the goddess Isis as his wife, sister, again, that happens in a lot of pantheons, and started to reign over with great prosperity. Osiris brought civilization to men until that point they had lived quite primitively. So he taught them agriculture, he taught them weaving, he taught them how to make bread, and besides that, he decreed the use of laws, which would give order to the kind of state of chaos that they were in. So the Egyptian civilization begins to flourish now at this point under this reign of this wonderful god, Osiris and Isis, and they were known to be very benevolent deities, okay? Now, Set, being powerful and ambitious, and jealous too, very jealous, had his own kingdom, but it was in the desert around Egypt. So he was very envious of his brother, whose land was very fertile and prosperous. So he also was furious with his brother as well, because this is another story that we'll get into. All right, in short form, we're going to get into the story a little bit later. Osiris fathered a child with Nephthys. Okay, that was Set's wife. Okay, so from the 4 primordial gods that were born, okay, 2 male, 2 female, there's 2 couplings there, all right, which happens a lot in a lot of the pantheons, as I said. Anyways, this affair between Osiris and Nephthys results in Anubis, who is essentially the god of the dead. Now, Set was said to not have any offspring. That will be explained why in a little bit. So he really, really wanted revenge on his brother, of course, because that made him furious, because he just could not stand that Nephthys had Anubis with his brother. So this really angered him. He couldn't get over the betrayal. He just kept preparing for revenge. So there's another god of the dry lands who is the personification of evil itself. And he invited Osiris over for a great feast. And he made it in his honor. So during this feast, Set gifted the guests with this beautiful golden coffin. And he said he would offer it to anyone who fit inside it perfectly. So Osiris decided to try it. Imagine that. And immediately after settling in, Set closed the coffin lid, trapping him, and then he threw that coffin into the Nile, drowning him. Isis, of course, very upset. She wept profoundly after losing her beloved husband, and those tears poured into the Nile River, giving rise to its traditional floods that I spoke of. The goddess and her sister, Nephthys, okay, we talked about a little bit, looked for Osiris's body. They found it. They tried to hide it. But Set found them, and then he smashed it into 42 pieces. And he spread them. He spread those 42 pieces throughout Egypt. Isis, with her sister's help, managed to recover the pieces, and under the guidance of Anubis, the god of the dead, okay, and ruler of the underworld, she mummified Osiris using her magic, okay, and she was able to resurrect her love. Okay, only for a brief amount of time though. That's what's sad. After coming back to life for this brief amount of time, Osiris conceived a son with Isis, and his name was Horus. And he swore he would defeat Set, his uncle, the usurper of the throne that was his birthright. So Set, again, the goddess of destruction, terrible guy, right? We know what he did to his brother. He wanted to take the throne for himself. He unleashed a reign of terror. But he didn't know that during this brief little bit that Osiris got to be alive again for a moment with Isis, that they had conceived a son. And then Osiris went to be the ruler of the underworld as well, okay? So Horus, who's depicted as a man with the head of a falcon, it was his prophecy that he would reign over the skies and would bring light back to Egypt, ending the darkness brought by Set when Set took over. So Horus, an adult, okay, because sometimes these gods and goddesses in these different pantheons are born as adults, okay? So he decided to claim his throne, which again had been usurped by his uncle. Now, this was seen by the judges of the court, okay? And this was presided over by...
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
The other gods, okay? So like Ra, okay? So Ra has been overthrown, so now the judge of the court, who then decides who would be worthy to sit on the throne. So a series of clashes between Set and Horus began. Like, this lasted years and years, and there's many stories about it, and lots and lots of time passed. Like I said, clash between Set and Horus continued. There is one famous story about them fighting in the desert, and Set managed to pluck out one of Horus's eyes. But due to Hathor, the goddess of love and healing's help, Horus had his vision restored. So the court of the gods, who I talked about before there, okay, demanded the reconciliation between Set and Horus, because this was just too much, right? They were like, enough of this nonsense already. You have bigger things to do here. So Set, being evil, he invited Horus to a feast, pretending that he wanted peace. And during that night, it is said that Set tried to abuse his nephew, making him unworthy to take the throne. Terrible, right? However, Horus managed to defend himself, thankfully, and prevented that from happening. And the story gets kind of gross here, guys. So I apologize, but it's the way it is. I didn't write it. All right. So anyways, after Horus managed to thwart his uncle's disgusting attack, he wanted to take revenge. So Horus took his divine seed, okay, and put it in some lettuce leaves, which were then offered to Set by Isis. He ate the contaminated lettuce leaves, and it poisoned him, and he started to deteriorate in front of everyone's eyes. A golden disc emerged from his forehead, and Thoth, who I'll get into in a little bit, grabbed it and ingrained it in his own head. Set, being humiliated, took off, and Horus was given the throne. Assuming his father's throne, Set's fate was now to travel with Ra, the sun god. And he didn't want to do that. So his enraged screams could be heard through thunder. Okay, so that's how they explain that, because we know a lot of these stories were to explain natural phenomena. Okay, the seasons, weather, etc., etc. All right, so Ra and the sunboat. So another story, instead of the children overthrowing Ra, was that he had just kind of known he was getting too old and retired, essentially. So he's usually depicted as having a man's body, also with the head of a falcon, all right, and a sun disk over his head, because he is, in fact, the god of the sun. He had one day been the greatest of all gods, but time wore him down, and finding himself too old, he decided to relinquish power and go to the skies. So, Ra was one of the most revered figures in Egyptian mythology. As the sun god, one of his duties was to drive away the darkness. To accomplish his work on his light boat. So this is how, again, like I said, they would describe natural phenomena. So they would describe how there was day and night every day. All right. So Ra sailed across the sky all day in his sunboat, bringing the light, lighting up the whole world. But then when the twilight came, he and his vessel plunged deep into the sea towards the underworld. There, he would have to sail through the dark world and cross through 12 gates, where it would take 1 hour to go through each gate of the netherworld. So Osiris was in one of them as Lord of the Underworld in this story. So Ra always stopped in to pay respect and say hi on his way out. But on his way out, he was usually attacked by the terrible snake, serpent type creature, Apophis. Okay? This was a force of chaos and destruction. It tried to destroy his vessel each day, and as the serpent deemed closer and closer to accomplishing its desire, right? Moving back into the light. Apophis once managed to swallow the sunboat, putting an end to the sunlight in the morning. But then the serpent failed to hold Ra in her stomach and then regurgitated Ra and the sunboat. So this event was marked by a solar eclipse. So that's how they would explain that. And I would just like to mention that the serpent here in this story is very, very, very close to Jormungandr in Norse mythology. Yeah. Interestingly enough. So Ra's boat became more difficult to destroy because Set was now helping the sun god defend the vessel against the terrible serpent, defending it several times, marking Ra's underworld journey safer. So Ra was worshipped all over Egypt. The god's name was used by many pharaohs. Ramses, a very famous pharaoh, for example, meaning son of Ra or son of sun, and carrying this name would strengthen their divinity with their subjects. All right, so let's go through the deities so I can teach you a little bit about them. All right, so we're going to start with Set because we've been talking about him a lot here. So like most depictions of Egyptian deities, Set was represented as a man with an animal head. But to this day, it's still debated which it was. Some say that he was kind of like a hybrid beast, a mixture of pig and donkey. And then some have an aardvark, which is very similar to an anteater, if you don't know what that is. Set personified violence and destruction, chaos. He was considered a trickster also. In some depictions, he's also the god of infertility too, so which is why he had no descendants. He was very jealous also that his wife, Nephthys, had Anubis with Osiris. So we know what happened in the story. He took the throne from Osiris and killed him, right, out of his jealousy. Set was considered responsible for all things bad that happened. Destruction of crops, thirst, hunger, famine, scorching heat, drought, etc. All right. And now we will talk about Nephthys. All right, his wife. Protector of the dead, guardian of the sarcophagan jars. Okay, so those are the jars that they would find in the tombs of mummified organs. I know, gross. Her image was often carved into them. She had night vision. She was also said to know how to navigate the desert. She was also a guardian over the desert animals too. And she could speak to them, kind of control them almost. Also fire breathing. She was also known as a master brewer. Yeah, because the ancient Egyptians had beer, right? She's often depicted having a big basket on her head full of abundant things. She's known as the household goddess. She was also known as the very, very neglected wife of Set. So even though he never paid any attention to her at all, right? He got so mad. But here's the thing. She famously shapeshifted into the form of Isis, tricking Osiris into having relations with her, and then that resulted in Anubis. So, yeah, there's some more shape-shifting and trickery here in this saga over here as well. All right. So, and then I didn't actually put down anything for giving offerings to the two of them, really, because I don't see why you'd really want to work with either one of them. But if you want to, and if you want to research them further, feel free to go ahead and do that. All right, now we're going to talk about Isis. Probably mostly everyone has heard of Isis in one way, shape, or form. So she is considered the most important and most famous deity in Egyptian mythology. She personified the faithful wife and loving mother. Her following spread way beyond Egypt, even having strong influences in the Greco-Roman world, because she was recognized as that faithful wife. She was sometimes identified with the goddess Hera from Greek mythology. We covered that last week. And Juno in Rome. Isis is a master sorceress. She was able to deceive Ra into giving her the secrets to governing life over death. She was most powerful amongst all the goddesses. There's many temples in Egypt that were dedicated to Isis. Cleopatra, I'm sure most of you have heard of Cleopatra, all right? The Queen of Egypt, she used to say that she was the new Isis, right? She took advantage of the goddess's reputation and proclaimed herself to be that. So Isis, for working with her for magic and stuff too, like, again, very powerful. seeress, anything that has to do with anything alchemy. All right. But again, if you want her help too with self-love and with attracting in a partner who has the qualities that her divine connection does, right? So that mutual partnership, the higher level of love, like those two are known as one of those examples of a divine connection. You know, it doesn't matter in which kind of circle you're looking in. All right. So if you wanted to make some offerings to Isis, you could make a little altar to her and put some candles on it. Red and pink, blue, also the turquoisey blue, okay, gold as well. You could give her offerings of any type of food or drink, flowers, incense, jewelry, hawk feathers as well, pomegranate, milk, wine, bread and beer, lotus flowers. It was said that Ramses used to put lotus flowers in the Nile as offerings to her. Incense and perfume. She really liked cinnamon, frankincense, and myrrh. Any jewelry, because she was a queen, right? And they were just like dripping in jewelry. And again, hawk feathers. So then we have Osiris, okay, her match. So he was the god of order, righteousness, benevolence, showing the duality between Osiris and Set reflects the Egyptian belief in the need for balancing of opposing forces, like a yin-yang, okay? Osiris was viewed as a perpetuator of harmony and stability. He's often described as very righteous and a very wise king who ruled over Egypt before becoming the god of the underworld, right? Before, his brother killed him. He taught agriculture, the law, and the worship of the gods, laying the foundation for Egyptian society and culture. These principles were key to the transformation from that nomadic and chaotic society to a more advanced and organized civilization. So, of course, he was married to Isis, common occurrence amongst the gods, as we've discussed, which I guess was meant to symbolize the union of complementary forces, but still very ick to me. So their union was viewed as the ideal model, characterized by deep love, mutual support, unshakable loyalty. They're often seen as the embodiment of...
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Marital loyalty, eternal love, devotion. He kept order and harmony of the underworld. Once he was there, he did it up, in the main world before his brother killed him. He's often depicted as a mummy, right? Because he was the first one. He was the first one that Isis wrapped, right? Anubis gave her that knowledge. So many temples were also dedicated to Osiris. He was also seen to be the ideal pharaoh, the pharaoh that was the divine proxy, right? So all the other pharaohs had to live up to what Osiris would have been on Earth, right? So, many tombs, they would have lots of depictions of him there as well, wrapped up as that first mummy, the pharaoh, the one that we're most familiar with as probably as a visual. And I'm going to, again, put some visuals on my social media to go along with your listening here. Still working on how I add video and stuff, if I can. Full disclosure, I'm not very good with tech. I have really, really easy apps to use, and that saves my life because not good with it. Okay. So, they molded their politics after him as well, because it was his values, right, that they were supposed to recreate here. So if you wanted to make offerings to him as well, you could make an altar for him. You could get like a statue depicting him. Again, offerings of bread, beer, meat, poultry, alabaster, linen, any incenses or oils, any other good and pure items, right? The good and pure being in quotes, of the earth too. Skulls, real or not, ethically sourced, of course. And also like bandages, cloth bandages, also make really, really good offerings. Patching your own physical wounds, as well as those around you, is an offering. General, any like death-related artwork. So if you do artwork like with skulls or anything like that, he would like that. He'd be down. And also any artwork or imagery of him and Isis. He really likes that as well. So if you are performing magic or manifesting, looking for a divine connection, all right, you're going to want to work with these two. Okay, you're going to want to work with them together. All right, so you'd want to build an altar for both of them. Just intuitively feel out what you want to place there. You want to pick offerings for both of them. Okay. A hawk feather would be a good one, because that representing Horus, right? And that was their son together. So that's pretty powerful. That's their creation, right? So I would use that. You could pick some incenses and oils and things like that are more pertaining to love, right? You want to choose things that are more to the energies that you're asking to bring in. All right. But again, very powerful couple to use together to ask. I don't want to say use. Ooh, I really don't like that I said that word. It bothered me coming off my tongue. Oh, I apologize. My apologies. Okay. As I have deep respect and reverence for those two. I do work with Isis quite a bit. Yeah. So summon. How's that? Summon the energy. Let's do that. All right. So now let's talk about Horus. All right. Again, depicted as a man with like a falcon or hawk head. Okay. The eye of Horus, you would be very familiar with that symbol, I'm sure. Again, I'll be putting a lot of visuals in my socials there for you guys to see. And I'll put all of that in the description box below so you can find me everywhere. I'm at _Miss Merlin on all platforms. All right, so pretty easy to find. I'll put my link tree in there too, and that has the links to everything that you need to know in there too. All right, so of course, he was the divine creation of Osiris and Isis. When Isis briefly got to bring Osiris back to life before she had to mummify him and send him back to the underworld to rule there. So very sad. But his birth is a symbol of hope and renewal. His very existence is seen as a triumph over death and chaos, right? As bringing light back to the darkness, okay? A balance of that. He's a symbol of order, unification, and justice. A symbol that justice could be restored, that renewal and healing is available. All the pharaohs were seen as incarnations of him, okay, and of his father, as we previously discussed. Magnificent temples with really, really brilliant architecture were erected for Horus, with like huge pillars and beautiful outdoor courtyards. There were temples that were dedicated to Isis and Osiris as well, but the architecture for the ones for Horus were just something else. They really, really were. Okay, so if you wanted to make some offerings to Horus, you'd want to work with him mainly when you really want to open up your third eye, you want to open up your psychic gifts, also for protection, when you're looking for clarity on anything as well. You wouldn't want to give up any food, especially meat, bread, or cakes. They used to make these things called shot cakes, and they were triangles, so like a pyramid, okay? Wine, jewelry, coins, precious metals, armor, weaponry, or anything with the symbol of the Eye of Horus on it. So again, if you need to know what that symbol looks like, I'll put it in my socials. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about Anubis now, who was their god of the dead. So Anubis, who...
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Was depicted with a jackal head, is the deity of Egyptian mythology connected to life after death. He is one of the most ancient Egyptian deities, and his role has changed very, very much by centuries. So Anubis was already considered one of the main deities linked to death and the underworld god, but his role was then transferred to Osiris, kind of when he was killed and went down there. So the jackal god was also considered the god of embalming and mummification. In Egyptian funeral rites, it was very common to see the priest or holy person wearing a jackal mask during the mummification process. You would also see artwork with depictions of Anubis on the walls in the areas where they would do this. This god was also considered to be the protector of the tombs and the cemeteries and the sarcophagi, therefore protecting the bodies and those who went to the underworld. So again, Anubis was the son of Nephthys, who was the wife of Set, and Osiris, after she did some gnarly things and shapeshifted and pretended to be her sister. All right. So Osiris, as we just discussed, was the first mummy. Anubis became the deity that led the spirit of the dead to the underworld, where the dead would then be judged by the court, presided over by himself, and he placed the deceased heart on a scale. It was called Mat's scale. Mat is another goddess. We're going to get into her in a moment. And on the other side of the scale was Mat's feather, was the feather of truth. If the heart was heavier than that of the feather, it indicated that the heart was full of wickedness, and that soul was then delivered to Amet, which was a demonic-like creature known as the heart devourer. Yeah. If the feather was heavier, if it was lighter, then they knew that the soul was righteous and good. So Anubis would then take that person to Osiris, and the deceased stepped into life after death. So their form of heaven was called Aru. Okay? So in the period when the Greek ruled over Egypt, Anubis was associated with Hermes. All right? We talked about him a little bit last week, also known as Mercury. We're still in a little bit of a Mercury retrograde right now. We're starting to come out though, okay? Things are looking better, all right? Venus retrograde is also ending soon, okay? So things will start to look up pretty soon if you guys have been feeling kind of heavy. Anyways, back to it. All right. So Hermes, as we know, in Greek mythology, was the charge for messages and also leading souls to the underworld, to Hades. So this association gave rise to a deity called Herm Anubis, which became popular during the period of Roman rule. So Anubis is certainly one of the most popular deities in Egyptian mythology. And he was the god accountable really to lead the souls to the afterlife. And he was pretty benevolent. So even though he was associated with the underworld and kind of the judge of that, he's still it wasn't a mean person. It wasn't someone to be feared. And then we have Bastet. Probably heard of her. This is the cat goddess in Egyptian mythology, depicted as having a woman's body and a cat's head. The Egyptians devoted great honor to cats. They were considered sacred animals. They had a very meaningful role in Egyptian civilization, since, thanks to them, their food was safe from rodent infestations. Cats could also scare away poisonous snakes. So Bastet is also associated with the sun because she did follow Ra in his solar boat. So a lot of depictions you would see Ra in a boat, like flying across the sky, and he would have the black cat in front of him, and that was Bastet. So she was worshipped throughout Egypt, and doing harm to any cat was a really terrible offense. The perpetrator of such a violent act could even be punished by death. Cats were seen as family members, and according to some reports, whenever a house was set ablaze, the cats would re-enter the burning house to help the residents escape the fire. The residents sometimes, seeing their cats, appear to be dead in the flames, but they returned to life once they were back out, thanks to Bastet, which is also where the saying of a cat with 9 lives comes from. So cats being sacred animals, they were also mummified in Egypt. They had cemeteries where they would have these animal mummies. And according to some texts, Bastet is linked also to Sekhmet. Okay, that's another goddess. She had like a lion head. This goddess was very violent and bloodthirsty. Then she was tamed and became a gentle, milk-drinking cat goddess in other versions. Bastet and Sekhmet were sisters and Ra's daughters in some versions. Okay, so if you wanted to leave offerings to Bastet, of course you're going to revere your kitties, always, 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 and be nice to them. She also likes fine wine, beer, chocolate, water, fruit juice, honey, figs, dates, meat, raw meat, right? And anything depicting kitties, cat statuettes, anything like that. And most importantly, be nice to your kitties. All right. And then we have Thoth. Thoth is a god of wisdom, represented as a figure with the head of an ibis, which is a bird in the pelican family. So they look kind of similar. It was also represented as a baboon another animal consecrated to this deity. So Thoth is the son of the god Hath.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Thor. So, I'm going to talk about her in a minute. She, disguised as Isis, had sexual relations with Osiris. So again, somebody shapeshifted into Isis and tricked Osiris and had a kid for the second time. So other sources say that he is the son of Set. So it depends on where you go. So it's attributed to him that he created writing. He taught the Egyptians to make the most diverse records with their hieroglyphics. He was also responsible for writing laws, teaching mortals the science of accounting. So it's this dude's fault for math. So if you want someone to blame for math, it is Thoth. All right. He's also known for being the protector of scribes, considered to be the god of wisdom, knowledge, medicine, astronomy, magic, among many other sciences, considered kind and very just. So Maat, who we just talked about, was his partner. They had a daughter, Seshat, also a goddess of wisdom. And in some sources, that was his wife. But again, depends where you look. Thoth is also depicted with a disc on his head. The story that we talked about before. Remember I said Thoth stole it from Set? Okay. So that represents the moon. So making him the god of the moon. Also the measurer of time, creation. Also, he is where they got the Egyptian calendar from, right? The moon cycles. So I talked about that a little bit before. How that was the most ancient calendar, right? 28 days. Moon cycles, just like also the female cycle as well. And we should have 13 months, 28 days each. But no, we have 12 with a lot of different days in each month. February's got 28 this year, and then, there's leap years, and then this month has 30, and this one has 31. It's just silly. Just silly. But anyways, the original one that made sense, the ancient one, was made by Thoth. All right, so if you wanted to connect with Thoth, this would be if you, we're really trying to figure something out, right? If you're trying to bring in something logic, all right. Again, trying to figure something out, something that had to do with time, also anything with cycles too. Okay, you would make some offerings, so like a clock, time, like those, pocket watch. That's what I was seeing in my head. Sorry. Any handcrafted writing tools. So like pencils are good too, because it's natural. It's made of wood. Water, beer, bread, even prayers and meditations dedicated. Especially if you're working with anything that's writing, communication, or seeking wisdom or guidance. Also the color blue associated with Thoth as well. All right. Now, Maat. Okay, so Maat was the divine partner of Thoth, so representing divine order, often depicted with an ostrich feather coming out of her headdress, right? Signifying lightness and truth. So souls' hearts were weighed against the feather in judgment in the scale of Maat, which we just talked about. So offerings for her are candles. Food is always acceptable with any of these deities. Prayer beads, incense. All right. And now Hathor. So this is Thoth's mama. So this is the goddess of fertility and beauty, joy, dancing. She was known as the beautiful one, often depicted in art in unusual ways as a sacred cow or a crowned woman with a horn that has a disc in between the horns. So in a lot of texts, she is the daughter of Ra. According to some versions, Hathor was seen as Horus's consort. She was known to aid in childbirth, provided comfort and food and drink, wonderful hostess, if you would, to those entering the underworld. She's the first one to greet them. Papyrus is her sacred plant. It was a favorite food for cattle, and that was her sacred animal. She was associated with also Aphrodite because of the whole like beauty thing, right? And Venus by the Romans. So if you wanted to make offerings to her, wine, beer, flowers, especially the lotus. She also is associated with the lotus. Sistra. So that is any type of bead instrument that rattles. Okay, especially anything that sounds like a snake. Okay. Manat necklaces and mirrors also, right? Because there's that little bit of that vanity there, because beauty, and that's where the association to Aphrodite and Venus come from. So that's a big one. Okay. And how much time we got here? Where are we at? Oh, okay. We still got a little bit of time. All right. So next, one of the very, 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 very ancient deities was called Hapi. So he was depicted as a man with sagging breasts and a sagging belly. So he was the god of fertility and abundance, often worshipped in some places over Ra, so even more ancient than Ra, referred to as the father of the gods. And he had a breastfeeding ability, hence why the saggy boobs on a dude. Okay, so he was a unifier of Upper and Lower Egypt. The papaya was sacred to Hapi. All right, and then we have Sirket, another one of the very, very old ancient goddesses. She was a scorpion goddess, depicted as a hybrid between a woman and a scorpion, or a beautiful woman. Sirket is a deity associated with healing, magic, and poison. Egyptians prayed and offered sacrifices to ask Sirket to protect them from snake and scorpion attacks or stings. She could also inflict punishment on sinners by sending her venomous friends to attack them. It was her job to shelter the souls of the deceased pharaohs and guide them to the underworld when they passed away. Sirket was summoned to protect workers, especially those facing danger, such as doctors dealing with any type of poisons or toxins, or any workers handling dangerous animals that had poisons or stings. Her association with poison and her ability to heal those stung by scorpions or snakes gave her a strong association with medicine also. Sirket amulets were very common and used for protection against poisonous bites, stings, and whatnot. She is also used in spells and incantations. Again, I hate that word used. I'm going to have to make note of that next time in my notes. To not use that word. I don't like it. It's not right. Okay, the energy of it is off. I just feel it. Okay. Anyways. Her name is spoken in incantations and spells to protect against poisoning. Sirket paintings are found in mummification halls, close to Anubis, actually, as well, and in the sarcophagi of nobles to protect them also. Offerings for Sirket, food, drink, any type of scorpion amulet, stinging bugs or critters, ethically sourced, of course, or those are fake ones. I don't even know where I got it. Like a million years ago when I was a kid. It's not a real one. It's like a scorpion that looks like a real one, and it's inside, like, I don't know if it's resin or acrylic or what it is, but yeah. But it looks like a real one, but it's not. But I use that anytime that I'm trying to connect the circuit. All right, and then we have Sobek, also very, very, very ancient. So, body of a man with a crocodile head. He's the deity of the river Nile. He's one of the oldest Egyptian deities, worshipped for more than 4,000 years. The pharaohs deeply admired this deity. They believed that he could protect them from any evil spells, curses, anyone thinking nefarious things about them, plotting, etc., etc. And crocodiles are very common animals in Egypt. The Nile crocodile is one of the largest species of the reptiles in the whole world, and also one of the most dangerous. Sobek, though, was known to be a very kind deity, and the Egyptians would also pray to him to calm the aquatic wildlife. He was also closely connected to the sacred river, so considered to be a god of fertility, right? Because water brings life, it nourishes. The Nile's flood cycles were responsible for fertilizing the entire floodplain, making the surrounding lands extremely fertile. So Sobek was worshipped in many regions, mostly in Fayoum and Kemobo. The Sobek following was very present because of the large number of crocodiles in those areas. When one of the animals would die, the crocodile would be mummified. So there's an actual temple, and I'm not kidding you, this is the name of it, Crocodilopolis, where these my tongue does not want to wrap around that word, mummified crocodiles can be found. The mummified crocodiles could also be found buried alongside different pharaohs and other figures of noble stature. The Egyptians believed that the crocodile mummies protected them in the hereafter. Before this, the city of Komombo worshipped Horus. The story goes, during a fight, Sobek expelled Horus and started to rule the place by himself. But with Horus gone, the region was plagued by many evils. Sobek decided it was best to reconcile with Horus, and they both shared rulership over the region. Today, you can visit the Komombo Temple and its museum, where there's still dozens of mummified crocodiles. In some places in Egypt, there were huge pools of crocodiles that were bred and tamed. These animals were revered as the embodiment of Sobek, and many of them, almost docile, made it possible for the Egyptians to adorn them with jewelry and ornaments in honor to feel closer to Sobek. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to play with crocodiles, but yeah, all the power to ya, docile or not. All right, so offerings for Sobek would be mummified crocodile eggs, ethically collected and preserved only, okay? Guys, we don't hurt things. All right, and the last one that I'm going to cover today, which I think is really cool because this is actually a person. This was a person that existed that they actually made a deity. So, Imhotep was human inducted. So, Imhotep was a remarkable ancient Egyptian personality who excelled as a visionary architect, renowned physician, and wise royal advisor. Had a razor-sharp mind and unquenchable curiosity. Pharaoh Dozier sought him out to be an advisor. He challenged tradition and designed the Pyramid of Dozier. I'm going to tell you why I'm emphasizing that word in a minute. And he was well known for his healing abilities. He could decipher dreams. His medical and architectural writings were viewed as sacred texts and his teachings employed in many areas. Following his death, the Egyptian authorities raised him to the rank of a deity, serving as a god of wisdom, creativity, and medicine. Many temples have been built in his honor, and he's still a source of inspiration today. So the reason why I was saying Dozer, okay? If any of you are fans out there of Ghostbusters, the Temple of Dozer, okay, that would come through in the first one. Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to parallel the reference just because it's fun. Anyways, that is enough for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you all next week. Remember, until then, stay magical. Love ya. Bye.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.